Hey guys, how's it going? KRIPP'S here. So we have another build for you guys to potentially consider playing tomorrow on Diablo 4's Season 5 launch. And it is going to be the fire, but not firewall, Sorcerer. So it is going to be a little bit different than before. I have recommended the firewall build for, honestly, since the beginning. It's a build that I have played as my main or second character every single season, actually. It's been a fantastic build. It's been great. But really, a big problem was the masterworking tempering patch. We actually lost many sources of lucky hit chance, and that was kind of the multiplier for firewall. Also, there was a bunch of like new tools for a whole bunch of other builds, or other Sorc builds, that is, and firewall really was kind of not doing too well with a lot of those. Season 5 has come, and actually, while a lot of that stuff is fixed, I do want to play the build a little bit differently. And I will explain, of course. If you guys do want to see this setup and you want to see the details, the write-up, the written form of the guide, and you can kind of compare your character as you're playing it and all that, make sure to check out my build. All my builds are on Mobalytics. This one, as with all of my Diablo 4 build guides, will be in the description. You can find the link there to go directly to this build. So why are we playing this build? Well, there's a lot of changes, and I want to go over it. So one of the new items that's pretty cool is the Rakanoth Wake Boots. So these have movement speed. They have 75 non-physical damage, which for Sorc is crazy. A lot of the multipliers in the Paragon have to do with scaling off of either non-physical damage or an element. But, sometimes that element is cold, sometimes it's fire, so it doesn't really apply that well. The best practice to kind of maximize your Sorc Paragon is to kind of get a whole bunch of non-physical damage, and then you just pick up all the multipliers along your pathing. All resists, which is completely useless, and cooldown reduction, which is the single best stat for this build. Whenever you cast a skill with a cooldown, you explode, dealing X fire damage. Very informative. X fire damage. Wow. So I'm hoping that X fire damage is not a small amount of damage. But who knows? Maybe it is a small amount of damage. But we would use these boots anyway because they have just crazy good stats, and cooldown reduction has been removed from a lot of legendaries or a lot of uniques in their reworks. Like Tal Rasha doesn't have cooldown reduction anymore. A lot of these don't have cooldown reduction anymore. And cooldown reduction is what makes this build, as I'll explain here shortly. Now, while the damage might be a lot, or it might suck, it is a case that usually damage procs in Diablo 4, they also can trigger lucky hit themselves. So you have to factor that in also. Again, there's no guarantee that it will, but hopefully it will. We'll have to see for sure as the patch rolls out. So I spent like hours and hours and hours going through every single Sorc change and every single possible combination. This is kind of a new setup. It is a little bit similar to some of the METEOR builds that people had attempted in Season 4, but those builds, honestly, they were just good. No Sorc build really competed with the invincible Sorc with permanent flame shield, but that is completely dead, so we have to go from the ground up to figure out what's good. I think that this is going to be a contender for what is good. You're also going to have Blizzard getting massive buffs with the Ice Spike damage, particularly from Blue Rose. You're going to have Conjurations going like crazy with the Frozen Orb build. There's a lot of lightning stuff that it was like super bugged on the PTR, and it has complicated interactions, so it's really hard to guess exactly how well it's going to go. So, that's kind of a question mark. Also, the best builds historically have been ones that just take egregious advantage of brutal bugs. But if those bugs don't exist, and if the X factor of the lightning builds isn't like super extreme, I do think this is one of the front runners for Sorc builds. So why? Well, this item, Fists of Fate. It got a rework. Let's look at it. So it has really good attack speed. it has really good crit chance, and it has, oh my god, did they like move a decimal? 52% lucky hit, non-greater affix, non-masterworked. I just want to point out the reason why the firewall meteor interaction wasn't that good in season 4 is because they just removed easy ways to get lucky hit. Before that, I had a really powerful like firewall meteor Sorc, and I was around 120% lucky hit. You can get more than that just on this item. If you get a greater affix and then you get it boosted from masterworking a few times, you can actually get over 100% lucky hit just on this item, which is completely insane. It is also that your attacks randomly deal 1 to 300%, so this is kind of like a 50% damage multi. Actually, it's just a tiny bit over because it's 301 that you're averaging, not 0 to 300. Now it might suck to use your big attack and you deal no damage, but this build doesn't really do big attacks. It just does lots and lots and lots and lots of like multi-hit attacks, largely through meteor. So the downside of this ability, honestly, I think doesn't apply, and this item is otherwise absolutely crazy. Now, the glove slot has generally been occupied by really crazy items, but they've also generally been buffing basic attacks in that slot. So this might be like the next thing, and is certainly huge for Sorc. Next up, we have the Starfall Coronet. So Starfall Coronet used to have like a few skills of Meteor, Life, Lucky Hit, Cooldown, and now it has Int Meteor size, 27%, not bad. Cooldown recovery still, and plus Meteor, but it's plus 6 Meteor. So, I mean, if you compare the left and the right, it's like, I mean, it's better. Yeah, it's better. The Meteor size might be good. Well, the Meteor size is actually really good, first of all. But you have to look kind of closely. The new top roll for the actual like ability on the unique goes down to 4 seconds. The lowest used to be it was 6, now it's 4. That is a big difference, guys. Okay, that is a big difference because this build utilizes Ice Blades to chip away at the cooldowns by flat values. So when your cooldowns have a starting point that is 2 seconds less, you are literally going to be spamming the Meteor button. And Meteor with Starfall Coronet, it doesn't have a mana cost. This build doesn't use mana. This build is 6 cooldowns, and the cooldowns all have high lucky hit values, and we're getting a crazy amount from the Fists of Fate. The cooldowns are being reset by Ice Blades. Every cooldown is doing a fire explosion from the boots. And the increased area on the Starfall Coronet, and by the way, it was actually the best temper meteor size on weapon temper. This is not a small deal because when the Starfall Coronet goes off, it kind of like covered the screen, but if you had like a non-huge monster, usually you'll get hit by like sometimes just 1, sometimes 2, maybe 3, but it's 3 additional. It's 4 meteors total. I think with this meteor size and a few levels in masterworking, you are going to hit levels where your meteors, all of your meteors are going to hit. And that's pretty important because if we go back to like the Fists of Fate, well, yeah, you're doing 1 to 300 damage when you hit, but it's not really like that, right? Because when you actually cast Meteor, you're casting 4 of them at the same time, and their damage of the damage over time burn and the hit damage are separate. So you're kind of doing like 8 hits at the same time. So if you like press 1 button and you do 8 attacks at the same time, I mean, you might roll 1% 8 times. I mean, don't play the lottery, but you might. But usually it's going to average out, and you're not really going to have situations where you experience the downside of the Fists of Fate, where you use a skill and do no damage. But also you're going to be able to spam meteors, so that's going to be awesome as well. We also have another item that has changed, and it is the Tal Rasha's Iridescent Loop. It is one of the very few uniques that kept its cooldown reduction. We get Potent Warding, which is kind of interesting. That's the defensive one that gives you maximum resists. That means that Sorc is going to be like the only class that doesn't use Tyrael's Might. Tyrael's Might got buffed and it's just absolutely crazy. But yeah, the non-physical damage is way higher, and the ability goes to 80 instead of 60. It's 20 per. Now that does mean that you need 4 elements. So we get the cold from the ice blades, we get the lightning from the teleport, we get the fire from a whole bunch of stuff. Where's number 4? So that is actually pretty important here. It is the weapon temper lucky hit. Now it just has to be one that's not one of those 3 and not physical. So it has to be like shadow, poison. I think that's it actually. So you want to get that, and it's actually kind of important that you get it on your offhand. And I will explain. This build really needs cooldown reduction. So if you get it on your main hand, you really want the meteor size to be the attribute that you slam with your masterworking. Now, if you had the meteor size on your offhand, that would mean that you can't slam both the cooldown reduction roll and the meteor size. So that is a pretty relevant detail if you're trying to kind of min-max your character a little bit. So you definitely want that extra element. It will refresh off these. You don't have to proc this very often at all. It's pretty good quality of life on that ring if you never used it before. And yeah, we basically just do crit damage. Meteor does pretty good damage. Meteor got buffed. Everything got buffed. Int got buffed. Everything is buffed. It's so buffed, it's unbelievable. The skills will look a little bit different. We don't get mana shield because we don't use mana. So that's pretty simple. Another thing is they buffed align the elements. It goes to 60%. So it used to be 40% DR. Now it's 60 DR. I know a lot of Sorcs just didn't even bother with this, but 60 DR off a big hit is actually like absolutely insane. So we have the Hoarfrost. It's like, wait, how do you, what? Well, there is actually lucky hit chance to freeze that you can put on your tempers. So we actually want that. The passive setup is not too crazy. Some meteor builds in the past use Shatter. Just take a note that Shatter has been absolutely crazy nerfed. Shatter is just like bad now. It used to be that if you had like 10 mobs and like one of them dies, it just blows up and then it hits all the others, and another one dies and that one blows up, and it would kind of create a chain reaction where each corresponding explosion would deal more and more damage off of the previous one, and there was also some double dipping before that. It's just absolutely insane. So the shatter damage itself won't count towards further shatter damage, making shatter probably the worst passive of all of them. So we just go with Essu's Ferocity, but that's pretty nice because that helps us get crit chance and crit damage, which is actually kind of tough to get. Yes, we get crit chance on Fist of Fate, but we don't really want to masterwork crit chance. We don't get that lucky hit masterwork. Lucky hit's going to be crazy. And then yeah, we have like meteor size there. We want the cooldown reduction there. That's a unique, doesn't have any. So it starts to get a little bit tight on where you find crit, but crit is really important because meteor does multiplicative damage on its crits. So it's pretty significant. The Paragon setup might take you by surprise because it's pretty important to get that extra juice on the Ice Blades. So Conjuration skills have 10 reduced cooldown. Reduced cooldown is a lot better than cooldown reduction because this is kind of like a multiplier effect. We also use the Conjuration glyph. So Conjuration skills have 20% increased duration. The longer duration you have on your Ice Blades, the more cooldown chips you're going to get from them attacking, but also you get more damage from having more of them from the Conjuration Mastery. So you might look at these Paragons just like, you know what? I'm gonna just cut those. Nah, it's probably not worth it. Look, it's worth it. This setup where you have Ice Blades, but you have to invest in Ice Blades a little bit, has worked this season, season 4. It has worked in previous. This setup works. It has like cooldown spamming, and it's even better next season because of the Starfall change. One little detail that I have here. Yes. So the Searing Heat was buffed. Its cap was increased by quite a bit. It's really important that you get that right away. So I do recommend that you get that right away. And unlike every single Meteor build I have ever seen, I still want to get Enchantment Master. Your enchantments are 20% stronger. If you're curious for the Ice Blades, this gives them a flat cooldown reduction from the cooldown spending effect. I think that's not a small deal. That's a really big deal in my opinion. And the reason why a lot of people didn't get it before is because the lucky hit on Meteor wasn't really that significant. Because, yeah, in the last few seasons, it's just really hard to get enough lucky hit. But again, that changes with Fist of Fate. So those are two reasons, and in my book, I have to get it. This should be a really fun build. It uses a lot of core mechanics that have been kind of proven to work quite well in previous seasons, and kind of put them together, utilize some of the new fancy toys. It's probably a build that's going to utilize more of the new uniques and rework uniques than any other. So if you're a Sorc enjoyer and you want to try a whole bunch of the new toys, maybe check this one out. I think it's a pretty safe bet, and it looks pretty good to me. Hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you next time.